Hello and welcome to this webinar on grammar. Now, there are three key learning aims. First of all, what's the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause? Secondly, what is a participle? And thirdly, how can you use a participle clause? The idea is that by the end of this short session, you'll feel confident about using participle clauses in your own writing. First of all, what is the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause? Well, a main clause has a subject and a main verb. So a floorboard creaked, the subject is a floorboard and the main verb is creaked. It makes sense on its own. I heard eerie laughter. The subject is I and the main verb is heard. It can stand alone as a sentence. And the teacher turned around. The subject is the teacher and the verb, the main verb, is turned. However, a subordinate clause adds additional information to a sentence. So although it contains a verb and it may contain a subject, it cannot be a complete sentence on its own. It wouldn't make sense standing alone. So for example, until I moved, after the rain had stopped, and feeling embarrassed. However, if we connect the main clause and the subordinate clause, they make sense together. A floorboard creaked until I moved. I heard eerie laughter after the rain had stopped. The teacher turned around feeling embarrassed. And those are complex sentences. Now, participle clauses are, like all subordinate clauses, adding information to the main clause. Now, because they're participles or part of a verb, they end in ing, present participles, or ed, past participles. So waiting for the train, I prepared for my interview. You can see that sentence ends with a present participle, waiting, an ing word, or a word that ends in ing. Rushing my dinner, I almost choked. Jumping into the swimming pool, I made a huge splash. They start with participles at the beginning of the sentence for the subordinate clause. And then punched, I fell over. It's an ed participle, past participle. Crouched in the bushes, the cat stalked its prey. Dazzled by the light, I could not see. Those are ed participles. Now, why are participle clauses good to use? Well, starting your sentence with a participle, an ing or an ed ending word, will add interest and variety to your writing. So instead of writing two sentences, I walked into the room, I noticed the mirror was broken. You could write, walking into my room, I noticed that the mirror was broken. It adds variety and interest rather than just writing the same word at the beginning of a sentence. Here are some other examples. She was talking to her friend. She forgot everything around her. Sounds like someone I know, obsessed with the phone. You could change those sentences to talking to her friend. She forgot everything around her. Starting with the participle adds interest and variety to your writing. And the same for non-fiction. Games are played by children everywhere. And these games are highly addictive. Sounds like someone I know, addicted to technology. You could change those sentences to played by children everywhere. These games are highly addictive. So starting with an ed participle, played, adds interest and variety to the sentence. And you can see the last two examples. Tidying her grandma's house, she found some old photos, and investigated by many police officers, the crime was difficult to solve. So overall, what is the difference between a main clause and a subordinate clause? Well, the main clause can stand alone and the subordinate clause cannot. What is a participle? It's a part of a verb that ends in ing or ed. And how do you use a participle clause in a complex sentence? You begin the sentence with a participle to add interest and variety to your writing. I hope that's made you feel confident about using participle clauses in your writing. Thank you for joining me and see you next time.